Hello, and welcome to this new series from UK Rail Vids, which we're calling Rails of Britain, the Locomotive Series, where we'll be looking at the vast range of past and current locomotive found in the rails of Britain. Today we'll be looking at the icon in the Southern region, the Class 73. In the mid-1950s, British Railway's Southern region developed an experimental electro-diesel locomotive, the Class 73, capable of running on both third rail and diesel power. The unique design offered flexibility for operating on both electrified and non-electrified lines. The first 6 locomotives were built at Eastleigh Works during 1962, followed by a larger batch of 43 locomotives in the later 1960s, with these having minor modifications and a higher top speed, while also being designated as a Class 73-1 once tops had been introduced. While less powerful than contemporary locomotives, the Class 73's versatility proved successful, showcasing the practicality of these dual-power locomotives and are still on the mainline rails all these years later. With the class being an electro-diesel locomotive capable of drawing power from both the 750-volt DC third rail and its onboard diesel engine, this dual-mode capability allowed it to operate regardless of electrification. The class even been built to the notorious Hastings lines gauge, which is probably worth a video on its own, but that basically means that the class had the freedom of the whole Southern region. The class features a retractable third rail pickup shoe, ensuring safe and efficient operation while on non-electrified lines and electrified lines during engineering works. While the class also features regenerative braking, a technology ahead of its time, as we tend to associate this technology with more modern electric cars. For those that don't know, regenerative braking converts kinetic or moving energy into electricity during braking, both improving efficiency and wear and tear on the components. The Class 73's compact size and dual cab controls made it ideal for shunting around yards and working on lines with tight clearances, further enhancing its versatility. Throughout its operational history, the Class 73 has proven its worth for a variety of operators. We won't go through all these today, as otherwise this could easily turn into an hour-long video, but we'll start with British Rail. During those days, the class were initially used on small freight, parcels and departmental services across the Southern region, with only limited passenger working such as boat trains to Weymouth and other coastal towns. Their biggest change under British Rail came in 1982 with the introduction of the Gatwick Express service from London Victoria to Gatwick Airport, with a small subfleet of the class re-geared for 90-mile-an-hour running, hauling Mark II F coaches, featuring a Class 489 GLV at the London end of the formation. These train sets carried on into privatisation under the Gatwick Express banner, with the formations eventually being replaced in 2005 by the ill-fated Class 460 or Vader units. In 1994, it's announced 2 of the Class 73130 and 73118 would move from BR's Civil Department to the newly created European Passenger Service or EPS. These 2 locomotives are specially adapted with Schaffenberg couplings, allowing them to act as Thunderbird locomotives for the newly introduced Class 373 Eurostar formations, which at the time were running on the non-high-speed third rail lines out of London Waterloo to the Channel Tunnel, covering a distance of roughly 70 miles. However, with the opening of sections 1 and 2 of High Speed 1 in 2003 and then 2007, their usefulness was called into question, leading to the eventual redundancy of the class in November of 2007. Network Rail's history of the class started at the same time as Network Rail was born, having inherited 73951 and 73952 from its predecessor Railtrack. A couple of years later, a third of the class, 73141, was added to the pool, with all 3 of these being used for Network Rail's infrastructure monitoring trains and testing and certifications for power and signal upgrades across the Southern region at the time. Just a few years later in 2009, all 3 engines were sold to, at the time, first G-Bar-F. We'll talk about G-Bar-F in a bit. Between 2010 and 2014, Network Rail acquired another 3 of their class, while later in 2014, 2 of the class were converted to the infamous Ultra 73 spec, and the start of the new 73-9 version of the class. With these 2 locomotives being given a new lease of life, the selling points of the new spec was being cleaner, quieter and more powerful diesel engines. Sadly, after 9 years, all those Class 73s were put up for sale, with a tender being put out in late 2023. For anyone who's curious, 73138, which Network Rail bought in 2010 and wasn't rebuilt to the Ultra spec, was bought by GBRF for spares, was spotted up on blocks at the UK Rail Leasing Works in Loughborough in December 2023 and August 2024. Destinations, Trains, Planes has a cool drone video showing the sad look in 73138, which will be linked down in the description below. And finally, GB Rail Freight. Over the years, they've significantly expanded its fleet, making them the largest operator of mainline certified Class 73s. The history of the class goes back to the mid-2000s, when at the time First GBRF acquired redundant Gatwick Express units. These locomotives underwent extensive overhauls and repaints, emerging the company's distinctive blue and orange livery, with these locomotives being based mainly at Eastleigh and Tunbridge. These refreshed Class 73s were quickly put to work hauling engineers' trains, railhead treatment trains, and were also used on Network Rail's test trains across the network, finally allowing the class to expand their workings outside the normal home of the southern region. In 2009, during the time the company was known as First GB Rail Freight, they announced that 3 of the class were to be repainted into the short-lived and, I'll be honest, much-hated Barbie livery. Thankfully, this was short-lived, with First Group selling GBRF to Europort, the company which owns and operates the Eurotunnel, around a year later in June 2010. Unsurprisingly, the 3 Class 73s shortly had their First Group decals removed from the locomotives shortly afterwards. Starting in 2013, 5 GB Rail Freight Class 73s underwent a transformation, being re-engined and overhauled while being designated as the newer Class 73-9. These locomotives received powerful new engines, replacing the original 600 horsepower English electric engines with brand new 1600 horsepower V8 MTU diesel engines. With the first of this new subclass series being released from the Brush Traction Wabtec works in Loughborough during August of 2014. Then in 2016, GB Rail Freight moved 6 of this new Class 73-9 into all new territory for the Class 73, the Scottish Highlands. They had the task of hauling the iconic Caledonian sleeper service across the scenic Scottish Highlands, replacing the Class 67 formerly used on that part of the service. The locomotives take over the train at Edinburgh from a Class 92 and carry on to the likes of Aberdeen, Fort William and Inverness. Unfortunately for the class's long history, it hasn't avoided trouble, being involved in 5 incidents. The most well known of these was in January of 1982 when Class 73-115 was hauling an engineer's train which overran red signals on the approach to Croydon. It then ran into the rear of a stopped parcels train in Platform 1 of East Croydon Station. The locomotive was severely damaged, being deemed beyond repair, and was later scrapped. A number of the Class 73 remain with smaller operators such as spot hire companies and even the likes of South Western Railways, which use a single Class 73 as an oversized shunter in their Bournemouth depot. In addition to this, at least 9 of the class have been reserved across the UK, such as 73140 at the Spa Valley Railway, shown here in a lovely Network South East livery, which is unrevealed in 2014. A small fun fact about 73140, it was the first of the class to enter preservation, having been withdrawn from mainline service back in 1988. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a little bit more about the history and operations of the Class 73. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love to see your comments below and would massively appreciate a like and even a subscription to the channel. Hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.